you guys have probably seen the Hollywood. You got to do this, and the reason you do this is when that clapping sound hits, that's what we use to start editing. So then when we want to show that shot, it's easy for us to sync it. It's called an audio sync. So I'm just going to do this for the Wilson siblings. Are you rolling, Nico? And Stella, you're rolling? Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. Cool. All right, so tell us both. I guess I'd like to start by finding out when each of you started working here. Do you remember when you started?
Wow. I started working here during summer months in high school. So that would be 81 to 83. 1981 to 1983.
Okay.
And then probably into my first 2 college years. And then I ended up finding my own way.
Okay.
And so it's been, 40 years.
And you're still going.
Yeah. Well, just to be clear, I've never worked here.
Okay.
I've only worked here on a couple occasions. In between opportunities, after my summer months of working either here or Marini's, I ended up going to school in Nevada, up in Reno. And when I graduated from college, I had some discussions with my brothers who were here at the time. I believe you were in San Francisco at the time. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, go out, do something. You can always come here and work here full time if you ever want to, but go do something else. So I found something else, and I've stuck to it. I've been in the same industry since graduated from college in 1988.
Wow.
87.
What was it? What did you...
So I ended up becoming a geography major in college, and I ended up learning how to make digital maps. Taking our paper maps, turning it into digital, sort of like the Google Maps that we all are fond of today, but doing that in the mid 80s.
Okay.
And then getting into the global positioning satellite services, and so I'm kind of in the high tech. And that's what I've been doing since then.
And that's separate from this? Or?
That's separate, 100% separate this. So I'm the only sibling.
Okay.
That has not full-time worked for George H. Wilson.
Okay, so when you were working here, what were you doing?
So in the summer months, it would be driving trucks, delivering product, doing some service work, learning some of the ropes. I then jumped into my current role out in the world, but I came back in '96 and helped with the 75th anniversary, did some marketing effort for about 6 months. And then I was in between opportunities in '99, and I helped with the computer system. Back then there was a big craze that the 2000 bug was going to bite everyone, so I helped procure a new computer system that was pretty old at the time, and that worked out quite well. So I guess in total those were 2 stints of 6 months each, and then I went back to high tech.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
And Julie, how about you? When did you start working here?
Well, I had a couple of summers where I had summer school at Santa Cruz High, and at that time the shop was on Water Street, and my grandfather thought it'd be great if I worked here. So I spent 2 days washing trucks and decided I didn't like that. So I ended up at the Pasatiempo Inn being a chambermaid instead. So that was short term, that was 2 days. And then when I was probably 22, I was home for just a short amount of time, and I substituted at the reception desk. And at that time, when they did all the bidding, everything came by phone. And so the person that answered the phone had a huge job. They had to make sure that they transferred the call correctly to Bluey or my dad or whomever was bidding the job. And if you disconnected that line, you were in deep, you know what. So I did that for 2 weeks because I relieved someone who went on vacation. And then I went away and went off into the world, and I moved back to Santa Cruz 15 years ago when my kids were small, and started, I was working in Watsonville, and they had an opening in the service department in dispatch. And I was, you know, I'm an artist, and I had other things going, and I had a full-time job in Watsonville. But my niece Abby suggested to Tom, my brother, well, why don't you offer the job to Julie? So, you know, I was 15 years ago, and so I was, I think, 47-ish, and I've been here ever since. So I've been in the service department doing dispatch and billing for 13 years, and now I've transferred into the accounting department, and now I'm just doing service billing. I'm not dispatching anymore.
Okay. So tell us what your early sort of reaction was when it was like, hey, go to work with your brother, for your brother.
Well, the nice thing was it was separate, because Tom and Bluey were over on this side, and my dad was still here, and dispatch is pretty fast-paced. So we were very separate. So I wasn't afraid to work with them, because I knew that they had their world and I had my world over there.
Okay.
And my dad kind of kept everybody, you know, with a sense of humor. And I remember one time I had a problem with a customer, and my dad was able to say with a deep breath, will you tell them that we'll come back out and take out everything that we did, and they can start over with somebody else at no charge. So it was kind of, you know, he had a reality check for everybody. It's like, you know, take a deep breath. It's gonna be okay.
Right. So tell me, both of you, what are your memories of Dad, in terms of just as a dad, and then in terms of the business side of it, and being here and being around it? What are your memories of Pops?
Yeah. Well, for me, I was, and learned this later in life, he was the ultimate communicator without saying anything. There was a lot of non-communication, non-verbal communication that took place with all family members.
That was very clear. Very clear.
And you could just read it on his face, you know, whether it was goodness or badness. And it was fantastic. And, you know, later in life, and especially, you know, when we had the service here for him, just the respect that he gathered from all of his industry colleagues for, you know, 60 years. Since I think he started here in 1950. Boy, 70 years. So, you know, that was quite an amazing feat. So that was pretty proud
Okay.
to be part of that.
Julie, how about you?
Well, he was awesome. You know, as a kid, we would come on Saturdays to the old shop, and he'd be working, and we would be just kind of let loose. And it was kind of like the mystery spot, or not the mystery spot, but the Winchester Mystery House. There was lots of add-ons, and you know, it was a lot of fun to just kind of break loose in the old shop. And he was always very businesslike, and you know, like Peter said, he didn't say much, but he meant a lot, and everybody loved him here. And
Well,
especially in his later years, he would constantly kind of walk the property basically, and just touch base with everybody, you know, and we all felt like, you know, this was his baby. He was carrying on what his grandfather or his father started, and just meant the world to him.
Did you guys feel a pressure at any point in your lives from him to get into the family business, or was that never an issue?
He let us all be who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no pressure. And, you know, it just worked out that I'm the one that, you know, went on my different way. Kind of hang out here quite a bit. I was part of the board to be kind of a sounding. I would sound the marketing and future alarms of, you know, what's the next technology. how is the marketing coming along, things of that nature. So I kind of had my toe in it a little bit, but not on the day-to-day operations.
And I'm curious about your perspective on your dad from the business side of it, in terms of maybe more for you, but both of you, in terms of how he ran this business and how he conducted himself and expected others to conduct themselves, in terms of just the businessman that your dad was.
Well, he always presented himself as, every day I'm going to work as hard as I can. And he always said to me, and I'm sure to everyone else, if the building closes today, I will have a job tomorrow, because I don't mind what it is. I'm just going to work really hard. And so I think just watching him take his life so seriously, and his role as, contributor, I think rubbed off on all of us, is that it doesn't really matter what we do as long as we work hard and show up.
That's great.
Yeah, it's an interesting timeline, because our dad was born in 1924, right before the Depression, and then he was part of World War II, and my grandfather George, our grandfather George, was part of that as well. And I had a conversation with someone the other day. We're losing that generation that have lived through all those pieces of goodness and the badness, and they don't have that perspective. And it was really good to see him work hard and have people work hard for him, for the whole crew here, because I think that's what's really developed well with George H. Wilson's brand, and just the local knowledge of everyone working hard for the right reason, helping people out.
Tell me, you mentioned him, and I was going to ask you about him. So what about Grandpa George, in terms of memories or what he was like, or anything you'd share about your grandpa that you remember, whether it's related to the business or just in general? What was he like?
He was pretty intense.
How?
He commanded the room. When he would walk in, it was clear that he didn't use his voice to command it, but you can see with his presence that everyone kind of went, "Oh, George is here." And I remember at an early age, during high school, at that time he would get a ride. He had a driver, because at that time he was in his mid-80s, and he would drive the yard and drive all the construction sites. And he would have the person stop the car, and he would call someone over, and he would point out something or say, "Hey, what's going on here?" just to stay engaged. And he passed away, and I think he was 99. And just a year or two before that, he was still counting all the checks. So every check that got cashed every 2 weeks, he made sure that all the employees cashed their check. So he was engaged for, forever.
Wow.
Yeah, so...
Sorry to interrupt. The mic's making something like poof, 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 poof,
Is it?
poof, poof.
Okay.
Maybe
Alright.
you could try to move it.
Or is it? Yeah, we can move it.
Let me try to put it on my...
Yeah, you can just go. We'll just do this.
Here, this is weird. It's still going.
Is the battery
it's-
dying?
Oh. This is turning purple.
Oh, okay, that's what it is. So let's get some batteries. It's all right. That's a good catch.
That's a good interruption.
It's a good interruption. We're okay with that. Okay, so let me.
So far, so good though, and everything else.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we'll just pop that out. Good. Oh, I got 2 batteries. Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that story. A couple people have shared that same story, remembering Grandpa pulling up and rolling
Driving
down,
around.
rolling down the window and going, "Hey, what's going on over there? What are you doing? What's happening?" don't do it that way. Do it. Hey, there's a full battery.
I'm assuming you guys have scanned a bunch of document or pictures in?
We've
or-
got them all.
Awesome.
They're all going to be scanned for sure.
Oh, sweet.
You're gonna have quite an editing
Yes, we are.
project.
Okay, so let's, I
So
think,
good.
yeah, you can just do that. I think that's fine. Are we good?
Much better.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Okay, we didn't stop recording, right? So we don't have to. Okay. All right, so we were talking about Grandpa George, and you were remembering some of his sort of characteristics. And like he said, he was here, he passed when he was 99, so even up to age 96, 97, he was coming around and inspecting and
Well, by then he was probably at home most of the time, but you know, we would deliver the checks to him up at the house, and he would make sure and put them in. He would stack them in order, and from the check number, and make sure that everyone cashed them. And then the next day, he would have them for my dad to bring down to the office to make sure, you know, that counting was done. So.
And Julie, what are your memories of Grandpa?
Well, my grandmother, his wife, was an incredible cook, and Grandpa was really spoiled. And you know, he had a big breakfast. He had a homemade, beautiful lunch. He had incredible dinners. And so when my grandmother passed, he still wanted to have all those wonderful things. And I remember one time a caretaker was on vacation. Again, I'm the vacationer cover, and I went up to serve him breakfast. And I said, "What would you like for breakfast?" And he said, "Well, I would like," and he would list off all the things that he wanted, because he would have oatmeal and eggs and bacon and toast, you know. And so I did everything, and then I proceeded to fry him an egg. Well, it got rejected. He goes, "Oh my God, that's not how you fry an egg. Let me show you," you know. So I know how to fry an egg now. He really, you know, he was very clear on his stuff.
Okay.
One of the early stories that I remember him talking about was when they needed parts in the early days, they would have to take one of the Fords and drive it to San Jose. And it was a 3-day trip. It was a day to get there over Old San Jose Road. It was a day to get the truck fixed and pick up all the parts, and then it was a day to drive back with all the supplies that they would have for their plumbing business back in the early days.
Wow.
And that was an interesting think about it. 3 days to go to San Jose and back, and here we do it in an hour and a half.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. Old San Jose Road.
Yeah, so you know, back then it was interesting. It would be an interesting study to see the supply chain, how it works today versus way back then. You know, with all these new gadgets.
So comparing Grandpa George with Papa Jim, how would you contrast them in terms of that, maybe starting again with just the business side of it and how they led this company from your eyes, your perspective on it? Did they have similarities in their managerial style? Was it total 180? Some similarities?
You know, I don't know. I can guess how Grandpa was, but I think Dad was a watch me, and because he was always so hands-on. You know, he really did it. And I think Grandpa did the same thing, but by the time we came along, he was already retired and not really physically doing the things. But Dad was, you know, all my brothers and my dad, you know, are workers and not just sitting in an office and pointing, okay, well, these people are doing this and these, you know, we're all working. So I think of my dad as that, just another part of the crew.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a very, I mean, it was a long-term relationship because they lived 5 houses from each other for, 30 plus years. So every night coming home from the office, our dad would stop at his parents, and before he got home, to update him on the day, update him on the work, and probably have a cocktail before he came home to the house, and that kept him going. You know, so you know that really fueled his eagerness to see what was going on all the way until he was 99.
Wow.
Well, and I think that was kind of Dad was put in a hard position because not only did he have his dad to have to report to, he had a wife at home with 4 kids. And so by the time he got home after he stopped at his parents' house, I don't think the reception was so, oh, great, welcome home, dear. It was like, where have you been?
Well, you know, you bring up a good point, because now he had to update his father on how the business is going that he started, and then he also had to manage it with having the kids work there too. So he had it at kind of both ends, making sure that it continued on to where it is today. So he had a lot on his shoulders. So.
But the fact that he worked so hard for us and allowed us to choose the paths that we wanted to do. And some of them went sooner into the business, and some of us, you know, was afforded the opportunity to work later.
Mm-hmm.
And then also be a consultant, you know, Peter and his consulting contributions.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. I don't want to forget the women in this story. So tell us about sort of the dynamic between Grandma and Grandpa and then Mom and Dad in terms of the roles that the wives played, maybe both at home and again on the business side of it, that you saw from your perspective. Like what were Grandma and Mom's roles in this story?
Well, Grandma was a real partner to George. That was Wave and George, and she was in the business, and she ran the office portion. My mother was more a traditional 50s, you know, role, that she wasn't part of the business, and so that could have, you know, was sad in a way that she wasn't part of the nucleus of all the activity at the office. So she was like the fun factor for Dad, that, you know, everything was serious here, and then, you know, Mom was well, let's see that there's more to life, and interjected, you know, other things.
And raised 4 kids.
And then looking back on that in terms of the role Mom played, how important was that in terms of providing Jim with a perspective and a grounding, so to speak, to like, hey, there's more. I know you're about the business, but there's more to it. I mean, how?
We got another mic from. It's doing the same thing.
Huh.
And it's saying it's the battery, but you just put in new ones, right?
Well, I put in new ones here.
Oh, maybe this.
So that one's now beeping us. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Oh boy. Okay. Sorry, you guys.
No worries.
Do we have, check that one, Stella. There might be 2 in there.
Do you guys have any batteries here at the office?
Yeah.
In case you run out.
There are none in that pouch.
What kind of batteries?
Oh, that's
are
that. That's that. How about that one?
Oh, I see.
Just 2 AA's.
These are AAA's.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So you need double A's?
We do. I'm so sorry. It's good you told us, though, Nico. We can't pretend like we got audio when we don't.
No. So you guys are Aptos?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's too bad. Should have gone to Harbor.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
no, it's so funny because Keith
I know.
Cerruti was just in here.
Oh,
and
yeah?
He went to Aptos.
I didn't
And
know that.
he said, and I said, he talked about his kids, and I said, your kids go to Aptos too? And he goes, no. He goes, Harbor, unfortunately. So like, so Cerruti's got an Aptos guy, the kid in Harbor.
That's
You're a
nice.
Harbor guy giving them that time
Doing the
about
business.
Aptos. And I'm Sweden here at Santa Cruz on the
Well, I'm an old timer. I graduated from Harvard in 1983.
Yeah. that
Tom,
was my
my brother.
brother's year.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I played against your brother in
Yeah.
baseball, and your brother and I were in junior guards together.
Okay.
That's why you see me up there.
Yeah,
at
yeah,
Talladega. And yeah.
Yeah. So these guys. Yeah. Yeah. So.
While we're here, could you try to move the mic on just up a little bit?
Sure.
There we go.
Okay.
Sweet.
Double A, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Yeah, so Stella's a senior and I'm a sophomore.
Very nice. So you're getting all the pressure on where you're gonna do next, huh?
Yeah. I'm just,
Take it easy.
yeah, I'm just going with the flow.
Yeah, there's no rush. Okay, where is it? Right here?
Hold down.
Yeah. Hey, look at that, full battery.
Can you
Yeah, I think
like talk for a second?
I sure can. How's that? Is that a little better?
Alright.
Oh, me?
Yeah, we got rid of the. Okay, here we go. Let's keep it going. Hopefully, this is our last interruption. So we were talking about grandma and mom's roles in this, and you shared with us. Is there anything, Pete, you remember about the role that those two women played?
You know, Wave, my grandmother, she passed away when I was probably a sophomore in high school. So I spent a lot of time coming home from school and hanging out at the grandparents' house. So it was nice just having that interaction. As for my mom, I think Julie said it best, where she wanted to make sure that the family had outings and kept a family unit, because as all Wilsons, they worked quite hard. And so she made sure that we went on trips, whether it was, just a trip across the state or sometimes heading to Hawaii or something like that. And in their older years, my mom and dad started going on big trips with their friends, and hitting the different continents. So that was really nice to see them do that.
Okay, good. In terms of kind of interweaving the history of this company with the history of Santa Cruz, I'm curious, and you're obviously contemporaries of mine, so your memories of the flood of '82, in terms of just in Santa Cruz, and then in terms of, I know you weren't directly ever really involved in the business, but I'm just curious, like, what impact that had, the flood of '82, when Santa Cruz was, quite a bit of it was underwater. And I've heard people say that there was some damage to the downtown office, more from the earthquake, I think, than the flood. But do you have any memories of the '82 flood?
I was living in Pasadena at the time.
Okay.
So I don't, unfortunately.
Okay.
I was a senior in high school, and the flood, of course, damaged a lot of the bridges downtown. As for the office, not so much. There was water. From what I recall, seeing the photographs of the '55 flood, that was more of an impact, because it was at the same facility. So, but other than that, I don't think it really caused havoc as much as the earthquake. Because that essentially condemned the building, and then that building got resurrected here at this location in Harvey West in 1991.
So this was directly born out of the earthquake of '89.
Yep.
Okay. So what are your memories of that in '89? Do you remember going down to the downtown shop and seeing
At that
what
time,
it looked like?
Yeah, at that time I was living in Reno, Nevada. I just finished college in '87, and I was working full time, and I wasn't here in Santa Cruz at that time for the Santa Cruz earthquake.
And I was in San Francisco working.
Do you remember when it hit up there? I'm assuming.
Yeah. I was working, I guess it's called Mission Bay now, I'm not sure. We're near the new baseball stadium. And I was working in a graphic design company. And I was right underneath the Golden Gate, or the Bay Bridge, and right near Columbus salami factory. And so whenever day I would go to work, I would smell the salamis, you know, being smoked or whatever. And it took me, I lived out in the Sunset, and it took me 2 hours to get home, which normally would take, 20 minutes. And then everything was shut down for a week.
Yeah.
Stayed in my apartment for a week.
Do you remember at that time going, oh my God, I wonder how the shop is, or calling Dad and saying, how is it? How is everything? Are we still in business?
Unfortunately, out of sight, out of mind, I don't think I really remember asking about the shop. I remember asking about, my parents, how are you? But I never asked about the shop. Isn't that terrible?
Oh, that's okay. Probably totally normal.
If you go back to the 1906 earthquake, I remember Grandpa telling the story that he lived on Market Street, and the house is still there, just off of Water down here. And I remember him telling the story that he woke up and he asked his dad why he was shaking the bed. And he looked around and his dad wasn't standing there. So, that goes back a few years.
Yeah.
Boy, he was probably 15 at the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, geez, talk about history. Yeah, and everyone I talked to just said that how crazy it was around here after the earthquake in terms of the amount of business that it brought, in terms of, hey, we got to go now, because in addition to being a busy company, on top of it now we've got real life like emergencies and fixing broken things, water heaters, whatever the case may be. So I don't know, did they ever tell you any stories about that in terms of, do you have any memories of them going, wow, it's, I can't believe how much work we have, or how crazy it is? Or
Well, the one thing that I learned about earthquakes in general and buildings is the original building down on Water Street was 125 River Street. Apparently there was an exact same building that was built across town, but it was northwest, or is north-south versus east-west, and that building got flattened, where the George H. headquarters was a north-south orientation, and based upon how the earthquake rolled, the building somewhat survived, but the other one was completely demolished.
wow.
So that was an interesting fact about the earthquake. And my understanding on just in general around Santa Cruz, when the earthquake hit, every third house got impacted based upon the waves.
Yeah.
So depending on whether it was your chimney, or whether it was your gas line, or whether it was your water line, every third house got kind of whacked
Wow.
in some way. So
It's interesting how that stuff works, isn't it?
yeah.
What does it mean for you guys to kind of live in this area and walk around and know that, your family's company has been a key factor in kind of building it and maintaining it? And you look at all the iconic, if you look at the anniversary from your 90th birthday, and you just look at this timeline of all these things that George H. Wilson built, whether it's stuff in San Francisco, Monterey, and all points in between. You got a pretty significant resume here, so to speak. So how do you feel walking around, or just being in the area, knowing that your family's company's been such a big part of this community?
I know, I feel such pride knowing that not only have this building has worked hard, but it's provided work for so many families to work hard and live. And in my area where I live, I'll be walking my dog down the street and there'll be a cover of a clean out that says Eyes Aunt Wilson on it, you know? And so it's wonderful to see that all these wonderful tradesmen and hardworking people have been thriving, you know, having a place to work, and so I feel pride.
Yeah, that's a good point. The years of other families, not just the Wilsons, but the other families that have had decades of work here at the office, and the pride that they put into it is pretty special. You know, all these buildings have been put up. You know, you walk away and you get to see pretty much nothing that is inserted because it's all behind walls or in ceilings or in the ground. And they've done a really good job. You know, there's a few jobs where you actually get to see the artwork, whether it's in a kitchen with all the stainless steel and architectural sheet metal. So it's nice when you walk into a restaurant and go, yeah, this whole restaurant is done by George H. Wilson for many years. So those are kind of some neat things.
Well, when I was young, I thought I wanted to live I wanted to live on a farm out of nowhere land. And working in service, I want to live downtown where I can have a gas line, a heater that works, a water heater that works, have water. You know, these are comfort zones that really mean a lot.
That maybe you took for granted.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and now I know what these people do, and I was like, well, come fix my water heater.
You know, circling back to one of the first questions you had on when did we first start working at George H. Wilson, one of the recent activities that took place was there was a retirement party for one of the long-term sheet metal superintendents. It so happened that we were junior apprentices at the same time back in 1983. So he started at the same time I was kind of doing my summer stuff, and he worked for the company for 40 years, nearly 40 years. And it was actually really neat to see the current group and older people that had worked with him come together for the retirement party. So that it truly is an interesting and unique group of long-term employees.
And Julie, maybe you can speak more to this, but certainly Pete, feel free to chime in. But in terms of the culture here, how would you describe it? Is that something that your dad really sort of emphasized in terms of what kind of company he wanted it to represent? In terms of, you mentioned all these workers who have benefited so much, but in terms of the culture that's been built here, what do you think drives that or drove that?
Well, I think the culture is come every day and work as hard as you can for you, for your own pride. And if we all do the same thing, if we all work very, very hard, and we'll be a success, So.
Yeah, from an outsider perspective, it seemed that everyone had their own individual expertise, and they have worked here for so long that their ability to work quite well together and just get it done without having to be told what to do, because they are all doing the right thing and in the right time to put these jobs together for years. And I sense that was a pretty important piece of the puzzle. Not many companies have been able to do that for as long as George H. Wilson.
And in terms of how you guys, you're out in the communities, obviously you live here and people know that you're part of the Wilson family. How do they react? What do they see the Wilson family representing in terms of, again, just the company, the reputation in the community, the fact that it's so grounded and so historic and generation. What do you get much community reaction from knowing that you're part of such a great company?
I think recognition is obvious. You say, well, where do you work? I go, well, I work down, at George H. Wilson. They go, oh, the red trucks. Oh, yeah. That's the first thing they say.
Mhm.
And then they say, oh, it has a wonderful reputation. So,
Yeah, the red trucks always would get the comment that, wow, they're always clean, they're always new, and there's a lot of them. And then some people would say, what do you guys do? What is a mechanical contractor? And, I think that's changed over the years, where there's a lot of, over the 100 years, the folks that really knew the business community that worked together, would always do business on a handshake. It seemed that was the early days. And then things, of course, have changed over the years, where it's very compliance oriented. And so, but those red trucks definitely are the brand around town for 100 years.
Yeah, no, that's like you said, everyone, that's what a lot of people react. Oh, the red truck. So it's definitely made its mark. What are you guys most proud of in terms of what the company is and what it means to people or the workers? I know you've mentioned, but is there something in particular that you like? I'm sure you're proud of many things, but is there something in particular that stands out that gives you the most sort of feeling of satisfaction?
Well, I think as my sister mentioned here, the hard work that everyone's put in, the dedication, and over the years it's just been fantastic seeing it, go 100 years from one perspective and having all the different family members participate. It's pretty unique to have that.
well, and I think the building tries to do their best, and if we didn't succeed, we will make it right. That's, I think, always, we're gonna do the work.
Yeah,
We'll make it right if it's not right.
That's a good point. I think from a legacy and just the type of work that's been completed over the years, it's quality work, and that's, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is making sure that it's done correctly, and that definitely happened.
I'm curious if you have any funny or crazy stories to share that you'd want to share about in being in this, family business, or just things that have come up that have just been kind of stand out. I've heard some, but other people tell them, but I'm curious what you guys, if you have any that stand out.
Well, there's a few where I had the opportunity. It was more of a summer job, and some people again went to Marini's down on the wharf. I ended up down here at George H., and a couple of our family friends were down here, and every one of us had whether it was an accident with a forklift, or driving a truck in the parking lot, or driving a truck over the hill every day. I was 16 years old, and I was driving a 20-foot truck over 17 with sheet metal in it. So you learn very quickly that you had to tie things down. Then of course there's the story of someone that went over to kill weeds at one of the county buildings and sprayed diesel, and it got sucked into the ventilation. They had to evacuate the whole building, but that probably shouldn't be on the tape.
Yeah,
We'll delete that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that this building has provided wonderful opportunities for so many people, and I was so pleased that my brothers and my father wanted my son to come work. So my son started when he was 14, and he worked 5 summers at least. And the first summer he worked, 2 days a week, 3 hours. And my brothers kept saying, can you beef that up a little bit? So each year he worked a little more. And his final year, he was working 5 days a week, and it was awesome. He got to see my dad every day, and he learned to do stuff with his hands, and that you don't get taught that.
Yeah.
So this is going to benefit him whether he chooses to. He's in college now, whether he chooses to go into a mechanical industry or not. But so last summer he worked down at the boardwalk, and he just said, it's the best job I ever had was at George H. Wilson. Working at the boardwalk, I can't even go to the bathroom. I can't even, all these things,
Yeah.
So he really liked working here.
That's awesome.
I think one of the stories that come to mind of the early days of when I was still in high school, and our dad would bring his dog to work. So he was one of the first ones to bring your dog to work out of necessity, because he would escape from the house and run away. But when he would come down to the office on River Street, he would actually escape and run down on the levee all the way down the river mouth, and it would take him sometimes days to find him. So it was probably challenging for all the workers that someone had to jump in a red truck and go find Jim's dog.
Well, and I think what's funny is that Dad was he wasn't strict, but you didn't want to cross him. And that dog walked all over him, that dog didn't listen to a word he said.
Right. The dog was on his own rebelling, huh?
Yeah.
Good old Cubby.
So one of the stories I heard, I'm curious if you have any memories, the bathtub racing at the harbor. Did you ever hear any of that? Where I guess they built these little aluminum sort of boats and would go out and race these other people who had their own boats, and the George H. Wilson boats out there with all these people in the hot tubs. They're in the bathtubs kind of churning them along and trying to beat these other boats. Do you have any childhood stuff of that, or no?
No, because I think that happened during the gap of moving away for me. I mean, I
Okay.
didn't live in Santa Cruz for 25 years, so there was a big hole of when people say, oh, well.
I guess it ended the last year. Someone told me it was like 82, 83,
Yeah.
but it had been going before that. But
Yeah, I think that was a Santa Cruz yacht harbor event where you can do some bathtub races. And I recall George H. Wilson creating a, so-called multiple bathtub boat that participated.
okay,
But yeah,
you didn't participate as a kid.
No.
Okay.
I hope you have pictures of our barbecues that Grandpa used to have,
I heard those
This
were
thick
pretty
steak.
elaborate.
barbecuing out here. Our picnics were pretty epic until it became not popular to drive while you've been drinking. So that kind of put a kibosh on that.
But there were some memorable picnics, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard about those. That was the other thing I was actually going to ask you about, because I heard about the epic Wilson picnics.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is there anything else about this story that you think people really need to know, just about the family, the business? Anything I haven't covered, or anything that you want to make sure people know?
I'm sure you've heard a whole bunch of stuff, but not knowing what you heard. I think it's an interesting story when you go back into the early 1900s and hearing what George was up to, and how he started working with Izant, and then went off to World War I, and came back and tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm back. You need some more help." And from that, it turned into George H. Wilson Inc. And that's a pretty interesting tale. And it's crazy that it's been 100 years. It's I mean, you look at the businesses here in town, like you mentioned, there's not too many that have had that heritage of working for 100 years. So it's probably going to be more special after it hits, and you can sit back and go, wow, pretty impressive.
Well, and I think also when you mentioned, what was your reaction to all the work that came after the earthquake? Well, it's almost like in this office, you're as busy as you can handle being busy. So to me, it's every day's an earthquake, and that's how they roll, So
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way to look at it. You're right. I mean, you can. I can imagine.
I mean, yes, it was probably more so, but really, it's pretty every day's an earthquake. Sometimes can be. It definitely in service, in construction. It's
Well, when you have service, you're calling service because you have a problem. So everything in the mindset of the customer is an emergency, and so managing that is challenging.
So out of the four, you four siblings, how many total kids between the four of you do you have?
7.
There's 7 grandchildren of Jim, 7 great-grandchildren of George.
Okay. And how many of those are, you mentioned your son, but are there any others who are in the business or want to be in the business, or?
I don't think so. My daughter she just graduated from college and still kind of figuring out what she's going to be doing. And then we have Tom's children that are nurses, and Bluey has a daughter and a son.
My son is 14, and your kids are
24 and 21, and my son's still in college, so he's a history major at this juncture, but I think he's thinking something else.
Okay.
yeah.
I'm just curious if you guys think, as we're coming up on 100, I mean, is this something that if it's been passed down, obviously, from George to Jim to you guys, to Blue and Tom? Is there do you see another Wilson generation? Do you see this thing going 150 years?
Well, we're part of a bigger group now. We're part of
Right.
ACO.
Right.
My son enjoys, working with his hands, and so I don't know if he'll eventually come back around, but I think he still has some years to figure out, what do I really want to do?
Mhm.
I'm in college, and this is my golden opportunity to figure it out.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think the 100 years is almost the end of the chapter for the Wilson family, from a perspective of the next generation that would be interested or capable, based upon engineering backgrounds or construction management, to come work here as a key employee. So it's been a good run, great run.
Okay. Anything else we need to cover? Anything else you want to add or share? For me, it's great just looking over you guys' shoulders and seeing this history and being part of it. And some of these old pictures of the old shop and just the red trucks, like you said, it's been awesome to do this. So that's why it's great to sit here and reminisce about this stuff. But if you don't have anything else, that's everything I sort of had written down.
Very cool.
I think we covered it in terms of George and Jim and the wives, the mom and the grandma. But yeah, if there's anything else, this is your chance. Last chance. Never a last chance. If you think of something tonight, we can do it again next week and add in something. But
Well, I think one of the things that everyone kind of jokes about over the years is it's probably safe to say that all employees of George H. Wilson has a nice full set of tools in their truck or in their home over the last 100 years, because it was a pretty open business from a standpoint of trust.
Okay.
And so, you know, those tools are theirs. And so some may have migrated into their garages, but you know what? They worked hard. So, and I say that even with my friends, because some of those tools would migrate home, and then they would end up fixing mini bikes or bicycles, and then they'd end up in their homes. So there's a lot of red, white, and blue tools throughout the county
There you go.
being still utilized.
And I like that term you use, migrate. They migrated there.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I could imagine. Yeah, you get a chance to work with all these cool toys,
Yeah.
new tools, and naturally you'd want to take them home.
Yeah. So, well, this has been great. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
guys so much. I hope it wasn't too.
No, hopefully you find a
painful.
soundbite in there somewhere.
Yes, no,